Most people will never build lasting food security because they are trapped in the wrong kind of thinking. Every spring they buy seeds, every summer they weed. Every fall they clear dead plants and start over. It is an endless cycle of effort that produces no permanent asset, no compounding return, no lasting infrastructure. They are not building anything. They are just renting their food from the soil one season at a time. And while they are busy resetting, replanting, and restarting, they are losing something they can never get back: time. Every year that passes without a perennial food system in your backyard is a year of harvest you will never recover. A year of nuts that were never cracked. A year of abundance that belonged to you and went unclaimed. The shift that changes everything is not a new technique or a new tool. It is a new way of thinking. Stop thinking in seasons, start thinking in generations. Because the people who eat from their own land for decades did not plant a garden, they built a system. And that system starts with a decision made not in the warmth of spring, but in the cold heart of February. The system we are building is called a food forest, and it is built on one principle that nature has used for millions of years: vertical stacking. A traditional garden uses 2 dimensions. A food forest uses 3. Instead of planting in rows across the ground, you plant in layers from the ground up, creating a living structure where every level of vertical space is producing food simultaneously. The canopy layer sits at the top, your tall producers catching maximum sunlight. The understory layer fills the middle space below the canopy, using the filtered light that reaches through. The ground layer occupies the lowest level, thriving in the partial shade created by the layers above. This is not a complicated idea. It is simply the architecture of a natural forest applied deliberately to your backyard. And within these 3 layers, you will plant 7 specific trees and shrubs, chosen not randomly, but strategically, each selected for its rootstock, its mature height, its production timeline, and its compatibility with the layers around it. 3 canopy trees, 2 understory trees, and 2 ground layer shrubs. That is your entire investment. 7 plants that will feed your family for the next 2 decades. The 3 trees that form your canopy layer are an apple, a pear, and a plum, all on semi-dwarf rootstock. This rootstock detail is not optional. It is the law of the system. A semi-dwarf rootstock holds your canopy trees to a manageable height of 15 to 20 feet, which is large enough to produce abundantly but small enough to allow sunlight to penetrate down to the layers below. A standard rootstock will grow your trees to 40 feet, closing the canopy like a ceiling and killing every plant beneath it through shade deprivation. Your canopy trees are planted 16 feet apart in a triangle formation, creating the structural frame around which everything else is organized. These are your long-game producers. They will not give you a significant harvest for the first few years, but once they mature, an apple tree on semi-dwarf rootstock can produce several hundred pounds of fruit annually. A pear the same, a plum the same. These 3 trees, once established, become a permanent engine of production that requires almost no intervention beyond an annual prune and a seasonal harvest. They are the backbone of your system, and they must be planted first. The understory layer is where your system begins to show its genius. In the second year, once your canopy trees have spent a full season establishing their root systems, you plant a dwarf cherry and a hazel tree in the spaces between your canopy trees, approximately 8 to 10 feet from their trunks. The dwarf cherry stays compact and productive, filling the mid-level space with fruit that ripens in early summer before most of your canopy trees are producing. The hazel brings structural diversity, producing nuts in autumn while also providing additional habitat, nitrogen fixation, and visual layering to the system. Together, these 2 understory trees ensure that your food forest is productive at multiple heights and across multiple seasons. They also serve a critical psychological function. By year 3, when your dwarf cherry gives you your first meaningful harvest, you have tangible proof that the system is alive and working. That proof matters. It keeps you committed to a 20-year project during the years when patience is the only tool required. The understory layer is the motivational engine of your food forest.
The ground layer completes the system, and it elant your currants and gooseberries in the ES, where your earliest and most reliable production comes from. In the 3rd year, you PJAPs between your growing trees, spaced 4 to 6 feet apart. These are tough, resilient shrubs that do not need full sun to thrive. They are adapted to partial shade and will grow vigorously beneath your developing canopy and understory. By the summer of year 3, your ground layer will already be producing fruit. Currants ripen in midsummer and produce generously even on young bushes. Gooseberries follow a similar timeline and are among the most underappreciated fruits in the temperate world. Versatile, nutritious, and almost entirely maintenance-free once established. The ground layer also functions as a living mulch, suppressing weeds, retaining soil moisture, and feeding the soil biology beneath it. It is not just a food source. It is an ecological service within the system. The genius of planting it last is that by year 3, the partial shade it needs has already been created naturally by the growing trees above it. The system builds its own conditions for success layer by layer. Timing is everything in this system, and the most counterintuitive rule is that you must plant in February, not spring. This goes against every instinct trained by decades of conventional gardening advice. But dormant bare root trees planted in cold, moist February soil have one enormous advantage over container-grown trees planted in May warmth. They have time. The roots go into the ground while the tree is still asleep, and they begin establishing themselves in the cool soil before the tree wakes up and demands water and nutrients. By the time spring arrives, a bare root tree planted in February already has weeks of root development underway. A container tree planted in May is just beginning. That head start compounds over the years into a measurably stronger, deeper, and more resilient tree. Bare root trees are also significantly cheaper than container-grown alternatives, which means your total investment in all 7 trees across 3 years is typically under $200. The trees will arrive looking like dead sticks. That is correct. That is what a dormant bare root tree looks like. Plant with the graft union 4 inches above soil level, water deeply, and mulch heavily. Then trust the system. The financial return of a food forest is one of the most misunderstood arguments in favor of building one. A $200 investment in 7 bare root trees planted over 3 years produces, once mature, between $800 and $1,500 worth of fresh, organic fruit and nuts every single year. That is a return of 400 to 700% annually on your initial outlay, sustained for 20 years. No financial instrument on earth delivers that. But the real return is not measured in money. It is measured in the 24 weeks between May and October, when you are walking outside and picking food instead of driving to a store. It is measured in the jars of jam, the bags of frozen berries, and the boxes of stored apples that sustain your family through winter. It is measured in the reduction of plastic packaging you bring into your home, the chemical inputs you never apply, and the fuel burned to transport food thousands of miles that you are no longer consuming. The food forest is not a hobby investment. It is a permanent infrastructure asset, built once, maintained minimally, and harvested indefinitely. This system works across USDA climate zones 5 through 8, which covers the vast majority of the temperate world. Zone 5 growers choose hardier apple varieties like Honeycrisp and Plant at the end of February. Zone 8 growers can add a fig to the understory and plant in the first week of the month. The 3 canopy trees, never 2 changes. Understory trees, 2 ground layer shrubs, planted in sequence across 3 Februaries. Your climate does not determine whether you can do this. Every year you wait which specific varieties you choose, and exactly when this February bears fruit in year 3. A tree planted next February does not. That is 1 year of harvest, gone forever. February is not a season for waiting. Start thinking like an architect of a
It is the most productive
families
for
for
the
the
next
next
20
20
years
years
forest calendar.
from your own backyard.
The moment when the
that
work
decision
you do is
made in the
invisible,
cold quiet
but the
of February
returns compound
is the
for
one you will
decades.
still be grateful for long after you have forgotten what a supermarket car park smells like.